Okay, we're live. Awesome. Well, welcome to Talking Talent Live, everybody. We can see everybody starting to roll in. We had such a great response to setting up this session for today. And yeah, we're here live once a month, exploring all things employer brand and activation. Kicking off with a quick co-host welcome to our resident employer brand expert, Keela Savelli. Just got back from a trip back home to the US, right?
I hadn't seen my family since before COVID, so it was really good to get home and and it was summer and now I'm freezing. I'm like rugged up.
Yeah, nice. And also, throwing to our guest, welcome Alex, on by special request. We had some people from our audience in past sessions call you out and put your name in our list to reach out to and connect and get you on the show. So welcome everybody. This is Alex McVeigh from CBA. Glad to have you on the show.
Hi everyone, good to be here. Now this is super embarrassing, but somebody has booked this room, which I thought I had booked. So let me just let them know that I'm recording something live. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry, these things happen.
We'll keep it rolling. And I'll just throw to Keela just for the acknowledgement of country while we wait.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, before we acknowledge country, I wanted to acknowledge that we have people from all over the world that are joining. And in Australia, before we do anything, share any meaningful content, we like to give thanks and show gratitude to the traditional owners of the land of which we are streaming our podcast on, our vodcast on today. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, past, present, and emerging, and show gratitude to those that are joining us live today.
Well, thank you, Keela. Are we good, Alex?
We're all good.
Okay, nice.
People are actually back in the office now, so you have to book rooms and you get kicked out right on the hour.
That's it. So a couple of call outs before we get into the conversation with you, Alex, is firstly, like I said, we've got Alex on today because somebody put forward the name and said they'd love to see you on the show. So putting a call out to the audience to let us know who else you would like to see on Talking Talent. Drop some names in the chat or reach out to us on LinkedIn and just let us know any other people, practitioners in the industry that you think, we can get some really good insights and perspective on the topic all around employer brand activation. So that's my call out. Anything from your end, Keela?
Yeah, so I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but redundancies are still happening. I haven't heard of very many in the TA space since the last time that we had our live session. But if you are affected or you want to help, reach out to us and we can pop your name and details in our newsletter, which goes out a few days after our live session. Or you can just private message us on LinkedIn. Always happy to help. And good luck.
Cool. And of course, always ask questions. This is why we do it live. We get some really great questions whenever we run the program live that really helps contribute to the conversation, make sure we're getting good insights and things from the guests that are relevant to you, the audience that we're doing this for. So so drop those questions in the chat as we go through the topics, but also our producer, Paul, as he does, keeps an eye out for the best question to give one of our Video My Job little giveaway packs. So we'll call out who got that little giveaway at the end of the show before we wrap up. So stay tuned. So Alex, I think we'll just jump into it straight with you as well. So do you want to tell us a little bit about employer branding, all things employer branding at CommBank? And also how's the team set up? What's the in-house capability look like and the mission that you guys are working on?
Yeah, sure. So CommBank employer brand, I've been in the role here for coming up on 9 years, so a really long time. People tend to stay working at CommBank for a really long time. So you'll meet a lot of people who've, 10 years is nothing here. The team has grown massively in that time. So when I first started, we were 3 people, led at the time by Victoria Redmond, who's now working over in the US. She's absolutely amazing. So if you're looking for people, I recommend that you try and get in touch with Vic, or I'm happy to give that recommendation. She's great. It was a small team of 3. Since then, we've grown to a team of 8, which is amazing, especially for, an Australian organisation. And where majority of our work is in Australia, we do a little bit of work in India, and that's starting to pick up. But, we're super lucky that we're able to have such a large and kind of well-resourced team. So within the team, in the way it's currently structured, so we're kind of split into 2. So we've got the more BAU side of the team, and we look after more of the traditional, that side of the team looks after more of the kind of traditional employer brand stuff that covers the entire organization. So if we're looking at kind of group-wide EVP work, group-wide advertising, our website, our partner channels, advocacy from a group perspective, there's in that side of the team is Lauren, Harrison, Rochelle, and we've just currently got Jess, who's joined us from the grad recruitment team, which is great to have that expertise as well. And Stefan, who looks after things from a technology perspective. If anyone knows these people, giving them a shout out. Hi team, if you're watching. Also on the other side of the team, we've got our project managers, and we've just kind of moved this structure around a little bit recently. So we have dedicated people who look after our priority. Oh, hi, Lauren. We look after our priority job families. So in those roles at the moment, we've got Katie, who looks after predominantly technology. That looks at everything from kind of the segmented EVP research type work, setting up all of the content that's required for those teams, as well as running really targeted advertising campaigns, events, advocacy, the whole piece, but super, super targeted for tech talent. And then we've also got Jade in the team, who looks after our business bank work, as well as our Indigenous EVP. So we've got a really strong focus on Indigenous. We have a 3% parity target. And so we have quite a lot of work to do in terms of making sure that we're getting that Indigenous talent through the door. So real specialists, real deep specialists, as well as some really broad experience across the team.
Yep, nice. So you've kind of got if I understand right, you kind of got about half the team focusing on that overarching kind of core brand that is common across all segments for the employer brand and the channels that you want to have that represented on, and then the other guys are focused on more specific executions into different parts of your kind of key talent segments or audiences, whatever you want to call it. Is that about how it's set up?
Yep, that's exactly right. And then we have one team member, Akansha, who's over in India. And so we're hiring for some of our tech roles over in India, have been for about the past 2 years. And we've just got to set up our brand over there because we're just not known at all. I mean, in Australia, everybody knows Commonwealth Bank, so we have no brand recognition problems. But over in India, we're, no one in the scheme of things. So there's a lot of work to be done over there. They've made some real great progress as well.
Yep. That's what I love about this podcast is that we hear from people that are, just getting started. And then we've got people that have a mature team with a lot of resourcing. And there's so much for us to learn from both ends of the scale. We've also heard similar stories of, our brand is really strong in Australia, but not so much in India or the States or, wherever else they have presence. So it's great that there's some congruency between some of the people that we've heard from in the past.
Yeah. And I think, as I was thinking about today and what we're going to talk about, and Jay, we spoke about this, but what we are really well resourced, and a lot of people are like, oh God, of course they can do that because they've got heaps of people and money. And, we are lucky in that way. But, I truly think some of the best things we do, some of the most impactful things that we do aren't the things that cost a lot of money. And if you're at a smaller organization, you have so many advantages that we don't have in terms of being able to be agile and not having as many restrictions around the brand and the process. So, I really am going to try and bring that lens to the conversation because I know not everyone wants to hear me go, and, we've got all this, so we're super lucky and everything's great. Like, I think I'm going to try and bring that lens to the conversation.
Yeah.
Not to blow smoke, but also you should be really proud of what you've done, because I remember early days when you and I were both getting started, we both had really lean teams. So you should be really proud to take stock of the last 7-9 years of what you've been able to build and sing it proudly.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely.
Yeah, I mean it.
So as you said before, it's like you guys are fortunate to have like a pretty good sized team by any organizational standards of like you've got good coverage across, like I said before, the master brand and then some of those specialized areas you're executing on. So we know that so the first topic is about like this approach to the EVP refresh that you guys have been working on. So I think is it about a year or so ago that this project kicked off? Is that about the timeline?
Yeah, so probably a little bit more than that. You
Yeah.
know, these things do tend to take a long time. And I guess it could be even longer than that if you think about like the evolution of how we've gotten to where we are now. Um, so it's all started with the development of our PVP. So we've got our people value proposition, which I know some people use interchangeably, but we don't. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I'm happy to talk to that. But we worked with HR, marketing, and employer brand to develop our group-wide PVP and our people promise. And that's very much focused on what we offer as an employer and our promise to our employees and kind of what's meaningful to them and what matters to them at the point in time that they're an employee. And what we realized was that we needed to obviously take that out to the external market. But that there was a real difference between these like pre and post employment drivers, and what somebody knew and understood and needed to know about the organization was different once they've joined us versus when they're in that job search phase. And so we use the PVP as a base, which is probably 2 years ago or so, to then develop our EVP, which we would have launched the EVP out to the team in, well, I guess that was nearly a year ago, probably, that we launched kind of the messaging. And then the second phase of that has been bring that to life through our new brand and visual identity, which has really been the fun part. And that's the part that's so exciting to see out in market now. So yeah, it's been quite a long journey, but it's great to see it actually come to fruition.
Yeah, and obviously, it's like you said, it's a pretty big project and super challenging to work through. Delivering something like the breadth and depth of something like CommBank and work that through to a point that you're still creating something that looks and feel like reflects all that, but looks and feels authentic to the market or to the candidates will still value. So, can you tell us a bit more about like the approach? Like, why did you guys set out on that? What was it that changed in the company or say the market that set you guys up to do the refresh, or was it more of just the other one had been in market for a while and you felt like it was time to just go through that refresh itself?
It was a bit of both, and to be honest, not that much had actually changed. You know, you think it has been in market a long time, but things changed a little bit. But generally, what was good about the organization 10 years ago is probably still what's really good about it now. And so that was a driver, obviously just a timing thing. There had to be a sense check element. And we were open to it being a sense check. We're like, if we don't need to change anything, we don't need to change anything. Great, we'll just leave it as is. There was obviously the market at the time, so the difficulty in finding talent and us needing to find a way to, get ahead and get that edge. I think, as Quill and I know from being in the industry a while, like it was smaller, and now there's a lot more people who have come into the industry and a lot more organizations who are catching up. So we just felt like we needed to get a little bit of that competitive advantage back. And also we needed to bring kind of our messaging in line with our group brand. And so it was a good time to do all of that together. You asked a question about how did we keep it authentic? The way that we've kept it authentic is by actually keeping it quite broad. And we actually made the decision to not develop like an EVP strapline. We've kept it as 5 pillars, which are very broad and very open to interpretation. And we've really focused on how our people can bring that to life for, their teams, themselves individually, what resonates, what doesn't. Like there's a lot of flexibility in the way that we've developed our EVP. And the same with our visual identity, it can really be changed and used in lots of different ways. That's kind of hard to do, to make sure that it has flexibility and stretch for everyone. But I think it's really important, if you want it to be authentic, you have to allow people to bring a bit of themselves to your EVP, and rather than just making it prescriptive for people to use.
So we got a lot of great questions coming up in the chat, and we'll get to those in a moment. So keep them coming. What's step 1? Like you identify that you need a refresh to your EVP or PVP. Where to from here?
Step one was probably talking to I would say our head of talent. So James Elliott's our head of talent, has real, really understands what we're trying to do, really supports employer brand and sees the value. The next steps were probably talking to some of our partners. So we relied a lot on third-party research for what we were doing. And, I think when people think of doing an EVP, like it can often be overcooked in terms of the amount of research that you do. And my personal view is if you have what you learn in 3 conversations is probably what you learn in 30 conversations, like those key themes come through. And so firstly, we look to the external market, like what's the research say? What do candidates want? Because I think we've got a really good understanding of what we have to offer. And that really came out of our PVP. The missing piece was what do candidates want? And so we looked at a lot of publicly available data. So anyone, on the call, we used Seek, Laws of Attraction. We used data from Indeed. We used obviously LinkedIn Insight, Talent Insights, Randstad data, and Gartner. They're kind of the 5 that I think are really, really valuable that we use a lot. And they've done thousands of interviews and surveys to understand what talent wants. And really, the key themes that came across were so universal and are always those key themes remain consistent. No matter what anyone says, it's about salary and benefits. It's about flexibility, work-life balance. How can you make work for you and what works for you personally? And it's about career development and career progression. And they might be in a different order. Some things might be toned up or toned down for different, segments, different generations, different genders, but like they stay fairly consistent. So how can we make sure we build those in was probably the next step. Then it was validating some of our internal research and understanding, but like I said, it's very much a validation exercise. It wasn't this massive internal process of holding heaps of focus groups and interviews. And it was also looking at all the data we already had internally. So our employee surveys, exit data, all that kind of stuff was really, really useful. But what I've really learnt from previous EVP development projects is like you don't need to go crazy on this part. Obviously, then the next point was stakeholdering it, making sure everyone was comfortable, which we didn't really have much pushback on at all. And then obviously it was into like the detail of developing the actual work.
Would you be able to share what those 5 pillars are, or do you hold those close to your chest?
Can I share them? I'm not sure.
Guys, go on the career site and look for yourself, all right? Amy and Sarah. No, I'm just joking. We're all dying to know.
I probably should have thought of this question actually beforehand. Look, you actually can't find them on the careers website because we take an approach of it's woven into everything that we do. So I can tell you the themes. I won't tell you the wording because I'm not sure I'm allowed. I should have checked this off first. But the themes are around those 3 that I mentioned before. So it's about, benefits and being rewarded. Obviously, well, actually not obviously, but we don't talk about people's salaries. We don't post salaries on ads at the moment. I know that's a theme that might be changing, but it's about the reward and benefits and what's that whole package. We talk about people's career growth. That's the second one. Flexibility and work-life balance and how that can work for you. The 4th one is about your colleagues and how you can work together to bring out the best in each other. And the 5th one is around our kind of group, our purpose around building a brighter future for all. So how can what we do, how does that, how do we bring to life what we offer as a bank in terms of how we're supporting our customers and communities and building a better Australia, really? So they're the 5 pillars.
And is that different than, sorry, can you scroll back then? Sean asked, how did you work closely with HR in differentiating between company and like corporate culture and then this employer brand, or are they the same?
No, it's definitely building on. So it's building on our corporate kind of culture. We just tone up or down certain elements at certain times. And so, I think that certain elements of what we're talking about, like the way we bring to life, like the way we support Australia and the community, is probably, I would say, a later stage message versus the other pillars. So corporate messages, I say, would come into our marketing mix later in the process, if that kind of answers the question. But it's a mix between the two. I would say ours is an add-on. But there wasn't really any sort of disagreement or need to kind of negotiate on that, because the corporate pillars, I think, do reflect the reality of working here, and they are what's good about working here. So we just have to add on those other things that people who are looking for a job want to know about, that will drive them to take action.
I think that's a great answer. And I think, what we ask a lot of the time is, how does your consumer brand mirror, or how does it not mirror your employer brand? Just seeing some of the assets that you've shared on your own personal LinkedIn, you can see those yellows. You can see that the photography is really similar to what you'd have in the consumer experience. Can you talk a little bit more about the creative depiction of your PVP and how you tried to align that to your consumer brand?
Yeah, so this was quite a big project. And obviously we have to have alignment to our master brand. CommBank, for anyone international, very big organization in Australia, obviously, but super, super strict on brands, like very well known yellow. And so we worked with our group brand team to develop something that would work for our audience. I think one of the biggest challenges we faced was really challenging some of the misconceptions about working at the bank, because a lot of our corporate message and our consumer message is very much aimed at, like, it's focused on us being quite traditional in a way, and like stable, and that's really, really important, and that is obviously who we are as an organization. But when we're talking about trying to attract all of this tech talent, we have to be able to find a way to be like, but no, we're not a bank, we're a tech organization.
Yeah, we're flash,
Yeah.
we're sexy.
So sexy. And
Yeah.
so the way that we did that from a visual perspective is bringing to life some of those kind of marketing devices and elements. So to make it a little bit more, I guess, cutting edge and sexy, to make it a little bit more sexy. So one of the ways we did that, which I feel is very marketing speak-ish, is around color. So you'll notice that in a lot of our work, we use the color peach, which is part of our color palette, but we don't use that a lot from a group perspective. So that's been assigned really as something that employer brand can own. We use that in a lot of our marketing. Apparently it's very hip with the kids, that peach color. So we're definitely using that throughout our marketing. We've also used the U times CommBank device, so the collaboration, and that can be read in a number of different ways. But the way, I guess, and that's kind of on purpose. So there's the idea that essentially it's about the idea that you, and with your collaboration with CommBank, is greater than the sum of its parts. So you can have a bigger career here. And we went back and forth on that, a lot, to land on exactly what that should be and how it should look. But the value in using a device like U times CommBank is that it can stretch, and we're able to use that across like all of our different audiences, from grad to Indigenous to experienced hire. Did that answer your question? Now I can't remember the initial question that you asked.
Yes, it did. and then some. I feel like Jay is going to kick me under the table because we've got a lot of questions about this EVP refresh. So over to you, Jay. Otherwise, I just keep talking.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of good questions come through as well. So that's covered some good ground for us. I didn't want to skip over just the EVP tagline thing as well, Alex, because like I love that you guys didn't focus on that as like the ultimate deliverable of all this, investment in revalidating and refreshing the EVP. Can you talk a little bit more at all? Like, what was the main reason why you landed on that outcome?
On not having a tagline.
Yeah, not having one. Yeah.
Because people just get very hung up on it. People just go back and forth about this tagline that actually doesn't mean anything and is used nowhere. Like it's not our company purpose. We've got all that stuff. I honestly just feel it's a waste of time. I just don't think you need it. People spend forever. And I also just don't think it's for a lot of organizations. For some, I think it works, but it's more complicated than that. And it's very difficult to sum up what you're trying to do in one or two sentences.
It is. I love a tagline. I'm not going to lie. But I'm going through the same exercise right now and working with the consumer side. They've challenged me to think about, like, what are you actually trying to feel as a result of what you're looking at? Like when you go to the career site, what is the feeling that you're looking to ignite? And it's not the tagline. It's so much more. So now I'm with you. But like a week ago reading these notes, I was like, ooh, no tagline. I don't know how I feel about
like
that.
We've got our marketing taglines and our marketing slogans. And, I think that's obviously that, but in terms of the EVP itself, I just felt like we never really had a need for it.
Yeah, I like it because
Glad I've won you over.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah. I like it because I think like more broadly in like the messaging and like brand narrative kind of space. Like I feel like it's conversational tones are so much more prominent now, and focusing on narrative is much more prominent. It's like people don't speak in taglines, especially if you're telling a story. And also, like if I think more about narrative, it's like it's not about saying the exact same thing the same way 100 times over. It's about telling the story from different angles and different perspectives as well. So I think, yeah, I'd love to hear that it's, you guys are thinking in that direction of, it is so much more about the story and telling that in a more natural way than trying to stick to that exact set of 5 words that's supposed to convince somebody to change their perspective on something. So I think it's cool.
And I think something that resonated with me, from last week that Stephen said around this was like, he spent a lot of time trying to dazzle people and trying to wow them, and then it just confused them. And that's kind of how I feel about the tagline, whereas I feel the pillars approach is just a lot easier for people to actually understand.
It's the proof, right? It's like what everything should always be drawn back on. It's the same way that you come back to a corporate strategy when you're making a decision. It should be, the pillars that you come back to when you're going out with a refresh.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to the second topic, which is really just focused all about the activation side of things, Alex. So, because of this EVP refresh that resulted in obviously a pretty significant campaign to bring that to market, this revalidated version of it. I think, having seen the creative that we were talking about before, it's a super high end, like crisp, kind of piece of work, the pieces that I saw. And I think what I noticed as well, it's not, and I think this is probably a reflection of what you're saying before about not having the tagline and having that U times CommBank. It's not really a hard sell. It's not trying to convince you of anything or try to really clearly say that, oh, you've got a misconception about CommBank. Let me show you what it's really like. But I was keen to kind of try to get you to tell us a bit more about the campaign and what the underlying strategy that got to you to that set of creative and the content and the advertising plan that went with it.
Yeah, so obviously this is phase 1, so we've uplifted all of our basics, and we've launched kind of a good campaign to market, and over time it's going to evolve and become, I would say, the storytelling element will be brought to life a little bit more throughout the work that we do. But we obviously developed our brand guidelines, and being at CommBank, they were quite strict. So once we've got those, like, we're pretty set with what we're going to be developing. In terms of the actual campaign and how we developed that, so there was a lot of time spent on audience segmentation and previous results. So I'm sure this is a challenge that plenty of people face who are listening today around working with agencies who aren't employer brand experts. And so, no, there's a lot of conversation about who is this audience, where are they, how can we really target them. So we spent a lot of time really, really thinking about that, and it actually challenged our thinking in a good way, working with an agency that didn't work on this stuff all the time. So we then broke it down into two. So we've got our experienced hire campaign and we've got our graduate recruitment campaign. And there were really two main elements to what we've done. So actually probably three. There's the paid media, there's the organic media, and then there's the advocacy. And we did a lot of stock standard stuff, which, again, some of it not sexy, but we know that it really works. So we know advertising on LinkedIn works. We know how to segment our audiences on those channels. And we made sure that we had like a really well thought through plan about how we were going to target our key audiences through paid campaigns. We used LinkedIn. We also used Seek. We also used Meta channels as well for both paid and graduate. So we did a lot of like your expected stuff in terms of paid media. And I think this is one piece where my advice is, if you can, try and get at least a test budget to do some of this stuff, because the results are so measurable that I think it's something that really helps you build a business case for the future. But that's definitely a critical part of what we do. Again, and I'm kind of going off topic, but I think that one of my other really big bits of advice is around spending much less time on the creative and much less budget on the creative and much more on the amplification. So I think people can get quite bogged down in creating lots of different assets in lots of different ways. I would say pick a couple of things and do them really, really well, and then spend, 20% of your time on that. 80% of your budget and time should be on amplification and how you're getting that message out there. So there's the paid element, the kind of traditional stuff. We did a few different things, or we are in the process of doing a few different things. So we're just about to launch our first ever podcast ad, which is really exciting. I can't wait to see what the results of that are. We also did some out of home advertising around the city, which we'd never done before, which was a great, opportunity for us to showcase our brand. And then we've also done our graduate campaign. So we were quite heavily on campus, on campus media, as well as on those social channels, on YouTube, pre-roll ads and that type of thing. Then there's obviously an advocacy element to what we're doing. So how can we amplify this throughout people? And I think this is something that we have tried doing, we are trying to do, we have tried doing for a long time. I don't think we've completely unlocked it here at CommBank. There's still that nervousness that people have about sharing, and there isn't really a culture of massively sharing in a lot of teams. So I think that's something we still have like a lot of work to do, and I'm interested in anyone who's cracked that one, because I think it's really, really difficult to get people to share sometimes, even if they really do have a strong relationship with the organization and they feel really positively about working here. That's kind of a hard one. And then the next iteration of how we're bringing the brand to life is really exciting. So this weekend we're going to be at Vivid. So anyone who's in Sydney, I'd love you to come down and visit us. So we're sponsoring Vivid, the Vivid Music Festival event, and that's with our Indigenous Careers team. So it's about how we're bringing the brand to life for our Indigenous careers team. And then that's more of a face-to-face element. And so we've got activations throughout the city. We're going to be on stage behind the artists. The reason we're actually sponsoring Vivid music is because there's a really big Indigenous focus in that music campaign, and it's really, really difficult to target Indigenous talent. So we think it'll provide us a really good opportunity to have conversations with people there. We've got a stall set up. So that's, I guess, the third way we bring it to life, through events and face to face, and how can we actually be interacting with our potential candidates one on one.
That is so cool. And you're getting a lot of kudos in the chat. We'll just fly down. No big deal. That sounds incredible. What a fun experience that you're building for your team and hopefully for the guests. Will asked a really great question. I think before we move on to the next topic, what are the tools that enable you to bring this to life? You know, like you've got the agency that's providing you the assets. Are you popping that into Canva and doing all this stuff yourself? Are you relying on a media agency to pop this stuff up?
We use we do use agencies just because of the restrictions of our brand. So we have really great partnerships with a few different agencies. So we did work with M&C for this, for the development, but we work with a much smaller agency to develop our assets for the campaign. In terms of other tools, no, we don't really use. We are quite restricted with what we can use. And that's why I say you might think we're very lucky being a very big organization, which we are, but we are restricted with those kind of things. I would say the tools that are probably most valuable and important are like the measurement tools that we've got. So
tell us about those. What are those? Measuring employer brand, who does that? Let's hear.
I know the question, the magical question, if somebody can answer that one, but we do have a very big focus, being a bank, on results. It's not my favorite part of my job from a creative perspective, but has actually taught me a lot about what is possible when it comes to tracking. So we obviously track the performance of our campaigns really closely. I guess that's the easiest thing to do. So if we're doing LinkedIn campaign, a meta campaign, those kind of things are really easy to track. And we've changed our approach over time. So what we found is like really clear call to action tends to perform a lot better than like the vague brand, like the kind of brand messages. But I guess it depends on what your purpose is. Obviously, there's a difference between awareness campaigns and action campaigns, and so it depends. So we do keep a really close eye on that, and we've actually got someone, Stefan, in our team who now manages all that internally within our team, which is great because we can be really reactive in terms of, this isn't working, turn this off, turn this on, dial this up, dial this down, so that we manage our campaigns really with a lot of detail. And also over time, that's a really good measurement because we're able to say, like, in comparison to our benchmark, how are we performing? And that's something that does resonate with like our audience internally, to say, this campaign performed 20% or 10% above benchmark, or it didn't, so we're not going to do it again. So over time, that's a valuable measure. But overall, there's probably two key things that we look at. That's applications, controversial, but we can go into it. I'm happy to. Applications and candidate perception. So around applications, my view, I do get a lot of pushback about this, is if you're doing a really good job in employer brand, you will drive applications. I kind of don't believe that it's possible to only get the exact applications you want, especially when you work for an organization like us that is very it's a very big brand that has very broad appeal, that is known by like probably 99% of the country. Pretty hard to do. And so I think it's also a measure that the business can understand. So we only measure applications for jobs that are advertised externally, because that's what we can really heavily influence. So that's been a good measure that we are tracking over time. The other one we look at is candidate perception. So we survey our candidates and then we ask them.
Using
we use
which tool?
Qualtrics.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
Qualtrics, cool.
Qualtrics is good.
Right.
It's very easy to use. And we use those results and we track those results and we ask about like the pillars of our EVP and how they perceive us. So that's another one that's quite tangible for people to be able to understand.
When do you send that survey? At which point in the candidate funnel?
We send it to applicants who are interviewed by us after the recruitment process has finished. So we are looking at successful and unsuccessful candidates. And we know that their perception of us is impacted by their recruitment experience. But in my opinion, that's still a part of our role in employer brand. And so we need to know all about it. We need to know about their entire experience and perception. And obviously from successful and unsuccessful candidates.
And how often are you going into that data? Who's going into the data on your team? Like whose role is it to digest that data and then prioritize optimization as a result?
We all go into it. So we all have access. Obviously, the job family managers look after their own. They can cut that data for their job families, which is great. So we can see how we're performing, where we need to tone it up or down. The whole team has access to all of that data. Our leadership team has access to all that data. I'm providing it probably in a monthly basis to our leadership team. But I think in employer brand, it's also pretty important not to be looking at spot scores all the time, because things do go up and down. So we tend to look at like a longer rolling average for our measurements.
I was just going to do a quick call out for any other final questions on the topic around the measurement and ROI side of things before we move off the topic as well. Alex, I had a couple of questions from my end for you. So when you talked before about like, okay, is applications, are we talking about volume of applications, and like what kind of, order of magnitude, if you want to call it that, are we talking about in the difference between before you started running some of these activation campaigns versus after? Is it 50% more? Is it double? Like what does that, how big a difference does it make to that volume? And are you getting, and also is the tracking of the source, so you're getting down into the source, or is it just the overall aggregate level in the talent segments that you want to focus on that you're measuring that around?
Yeah, so for grad, it was like close to double. So for graduate, it was compared to campaign from last year, which was amazing. For experienced hire, it was less than that, but still like more than half. So more than 50%. So it's really made a significant increase. We've also seen, significant increases across careers website visitors. So it's definitely been very measurable. And candidate perception also increased over that time too. So the results were great. Thankfully, after all that, I think I would have died if they hadn't have been. And then what was your second part of the question?
Oh, no, that was it. You covered it. It's okay. Like you're talking about the volume of applications. And so it sounds like there's a couple of factors you're looking at there. One is by the different job families or audiences. You're looking at the volume by those groups, but also year on year. So kind of the timeline you're looking at, is there a meaningful difference as a result of these activation campaigns? Is that the kind of timeline you're really looking at and representing back to the business?
Yeah, so we're looking at compared to the previous period as well as year on year, but year on year is a bit funny because it's been so crazy. And so I'm kind of looking back as far as I possibly can to kind of find the trend. But I actually think at the moment, year on year is probably less valuable or realistic than like just compared to before you started. Whereas, yeah, in the past I probably would have said something different, but not with the craziness that we've just been through.
Gotcha. Okay, looks like we've got a few final questions to go through on this one. So it looks like it's a good topic. So actually, do you want to jump on these?
Yeah. So David asks, is the goal to funnel candidates to apply via your career site? If so, have you seen advertising costs on job boards decrease because you're just directly sending them to your career site?
It's hard. That is a hard question. No, that's not necessarily the goal of what we're trying to do. And as we all know in employer brand, like, it's very hard to attribute. I think that was another part of your question, Jay, or someone asked this, but it's super hard to attribute where somebody's come from, and it's not usually a linear journey for candidates. And so we don't really care where they find out about, like, where they apply. We've got really strong relationships with our, job board partners. So it's not a key measure of something that we're looking at right now. And it probably hasn't significantly changed, no, but I'm not positive.
And then Gareth asked another question about the alignment between collaborating with marketing to align the employer brand with the overall brand strategy and ensure that consistent messaging across different channels. You spoke a little bit about how they've allowed you to use specific colors. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring to light about that collaboration?
I think what's really important is spending the time up front. So we spent a lot of time developing our guidelines, and they're really, really comprehensive. And I would recommend that to others if they're not doing that already, because we have like a playbook that we can use, and it's now very, very clear and easy for the team to do their job. So there is that real clear alignment with the master brand, but also we know what guidelines we can work within. Everything we do has to go through brand approval, our group brand approval, but it's very it's a big process to create really robust brand guidelines, but it's really, really useful and makes your job so much easier in the long term.
Yeah, the upfront pain is worth the reward down the line.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just had one more question from Megan. Was a survey tool called Qualtrics? Yes, it was. Another survey tool that's out there in our community is Benchmarks, which is also really great. If you know the Circle Back initiative, definitely get in touch with them because that's their tool. We're nearing the end, and these questions have been incredible. Definitely, if you have questions, keep them coming in the chat, or you can, again, message us on LinkedIn, and we will send answers via Alex in the newsletter. But as you know, Alex, at the end of every session, we give our guests the opportunity to ask the community a question. We have I don't know if you want to queue up, Paul. We've got the question from our last guest who will be popping up in a minute.
So yes, so this goes back to something we touched on earlier. So does the next guest think, as I'm starting to think, that that the employer brand, the owner of the employer brand within an organization, should sit at the board level, should sit alongside the CMO, should sit alongside the chief people officer? Should they sit? Is the influence important enough, big enough that it should have a seat at that table, or do they think there's an actual home elsewhere in the organization? But yeah, I start to think as I just start to rattle through in my head all the things that we can influence around a business's direction and performance, I think we should be more important than I am. And obviously, I think I should be more important than I am, but I'd be interested if anybody else shares that opinion as well.
Yeah. Would you mind if we paraphrase? How important should Stephen be in the future?
Yeah, exactly. How important is he currently not as important as he should be? Something like that.
I don't think so. I think he should be less important. No, I think we kind of do. I mean, we sit within HR at CommBank. We have our head of HR, and we, feed into those conversations. And so I do think we have a seat at that table. Should it be directly from me? No, because I think my job would be far more about strategy. And I think what's important is kind of getting into the doing and the hands dirty. And I think from a CommBank perspective, we're moving towards agile and working in this kind of cross-functional teams. And I think what we need is to be close to the product of jobs. And so sitting where we sit, I don't actually think there's a better place for us to sit in the organization. We sit within the recruitment at CommBank, super close to like the challenges that we're facing from an attraction perspective, but also close to HR to understand the challenges that we're facing from a employee retention perspective. So I think I sit in a good spot, and I think I've got the relationships to feed into those conversations. So I don't know if I'd achieve any more by being super senior.
Great answer. And
maybe
you're definitely allowed your opinion. I think there are some organizations that don't have a CHRO or a CPO at the table, and so they might have a different response. They wish that they did, but given that you do have that, maybe that's why you've responded the way that you have, which is great. And do you have a question for our next guest?
Which we did. So just before we started the session today, we booked in Carly from BHP. So
yes, Carly George.
We're able to give Alex a heads up of who you're actually. We don't always know who the question's for, but in this case we do. So fire away. What question do you want us to continue the journey with Carly on?
Yes, and everyone should definitely join that one. Hi, Carly. Good luck. My question, and I hope nobody's asked it recently, but I didn't see it in any recent episodes, is do you see AI as more of a threat or an opportunity for EB professionals?
Good one.
Cool.
Love it.
Done and dusted. Alex, thank you. You're amazing. And thank you to all of our guests and our chatters. You've kept it alive. And I've seen a lot of questions just come through in the last few minutes that we will definitely get to after in not live session. We'll send them on to Alex so she can do her dissertation and send it through for our newsletter.
And of course, don't forget the giveaway. So Paul, have you been keeping your eagle eye on the questions to tell us? It was actually good contest today. There's quite a few good ones in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. But Will was consistent and asked us some great questions.
Nice one, Will. So Will, how do we get his details? We'll reach out to him on.
I think I know which Will it is.
Oh, good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Too. I think I saw his name pop up a few times.
Will,
you can just reach out to me.
Lucky winner.
And also, if anyone does have any like one-on-one questions or wants to speak to me, please reach out on LinkedIn. Like always, happy to chat employer brand, talk all day about it.
Yeah, nice. So we'll get connected and we'll organise your little giveaway for you. But if you'd like to be kept up to date on all of our live sessions, the one coming up with Carly and the highlights from these live sessions once they're recorded and distributed, make sure to jump on LinkedIn, just follow the Video on My Job page, and after that you'll get a little notification to join the Talking Talent newsletter there as well. So catch you all soon. Thanks very much for joining. Thanks again, Alex. Really good to chat.
Thank you. Yes, great to talk to you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.